O'Neill Outside Radio is brought to you by these fine sponsors. Works Power and Garden Tools. Toyota, let's go places. Visit your local Toyota dealers today. Big Green Egg, the most popular and most versatile ceramic grill. Huff Shed, great storage sheds and custom buildings. Year One, classic car parts for American muscle cars. Arctic Ice, the most durable, versatile, and effective cooler packs available. Timbuktu Outdoors, the ideal solution to live bait. Furminator, the best food plot implement on earth. And the Georgia Department of Natural Resources and State Parks.
From Black Powder Headquarters and the Bojangled Studio at Three Falls Cabin in the North Georgia Mountains, it's time for O'Neill Outside. For anything in the outdoors, this is your source. Listen in and call the show with your comments or questions. And now, here's O'Neill.
Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to the program. This is O'Neill with Works Radio for 2 hours. Outdoors on a Saturday morning. It's kind of refreshing, isn't it? No politics, no financials, just us. We're talking outdoors, camping, hunting, fishing, hiking, and with special emphasis today on the beginning of the fishing season. And I hope you'll join us. It's 6 minutes after the hour, and we're going to talk about where else you can watch O'Neill. Self-promotion coming up. You can watch O'Neill at o'neilloutside.com. Fox networks all over the country, Waypoint TV, The Camo Crusade, Destination Go, Pursuit Up. My goodness, Waypoint TV, you can watch and watch and watch. Now, you're listening to O'Neill at WSB 95.5 FM and 750 AM and the Sports Broadcast Nation, with affiliates, 155 affiliates across the country, Maine to L.A., Miami to WEEI in the tip of Maine, covering Boston and the entire Northeast. You can visit o'neilloutside.com. You can watch the show there. You can purchase O'Neill Outside's book called, appropriately, O'Neill Outside. People and places along the way. If you order it off the website, I'll sign the book and personalize it for you. And the sponsors of the show are, we have to do that. We have to have the sponsors, otherwise no show. Snellville Heating and Air, Tough Shed, Striplings, Works Tools, that's what makes it Works Radio, Rocco's Pub, Georgia Department of Natural Resources, The Big Green Egg, True Turn Hooks, and Roadrunner Lures. And we will have the radio prize package, the True Turn Tackle Tips, the Medal of Honor Tribute, and your calls at 404-872-0750. That's 404-872-0750 in the Atlanta area, and across the country at 800-972-8255. 800-972-8255. This is O'Neill Outside, the #1 live outdoor-based radio talk show in the country, and we want to entertain your calls, your discussion, your ideas, and we do have a lot of talk about, and I hope you'll join us. If you think... All right, what do you like to talk about this morning? Oh, welcome back. This is O'Neill Outside. What would you like to discuss this morning? Deer season's over, even in Alabama. You can still hunt squirrels a little bit. Fishing has just started. The days are longer. And so now fishing, it's on your mind. It won't be long till you'll start having tournaments here and there. Crappie fishing has already started. The full moon in February, I'm sure, got everything kicked off. And we'll hear from a lot of folks today about that. But one of the things I'd like to hear from you today, I put this on Facebook the other day and had an amazing response. What was your best fishing trip ever? Where did you go? What did you catch? With whom were you fishing? Because that seemed to permeate the discussion all through on Facebook at O'Neill Outside. It was more about I got to go fishing with my dad. I got to go fishing with my grandson. I got to go fishing with the first time ever with whomever. It was always personal. And that's what fishing is, because there's no computer, there's no iPad, there's, turn your cell phone off except for emergencies. Go fishing. It's one-on-one. I'd love to hear about your fishing trips today. If you'd like to call us, 408-720-7282-8255. I know in my own case, pardon me, in my own case, when I was 9, 10, I think the last year I did it was 11 years old. I lived in Atlanta, my family did, and I went with my grandparents on my mother's side, Luke and Mandy Turpin. And we fished with cane poles, black nylon line, a couple of little split shots, a straight shank hook. We dug worms from around the barn, stopped on the way and carved grubs from the old dead pine trees along the way, and we had a 1 mile walk, and we walked along the railroad tracks that led to their home, and we fished underneath a trestle, a railroad trestle, over the Tallulah River. They were both in their early to late 60s. I was 11 years old, 10 years old, 9 years old, and we caught a few, but you know something? It didn't matter at all. It didn't matter because we were together, and I learned from them as best I could as a 10 or 11 year old. I learned from them what was it like to live during the Depression. What did they do for a living? How did they make ends meet? They had 7 children. My mother was the third of 7. But see, we caught a brim or two, maybe a sucker, a horny head. I caught a bass one time. I remember that. It was a really big deal. The bass probably weighed a pound, but that didn't matter. Since then, I've been fortunate enough to fish, I won't say all over the world, but I've fished in Canada and Costa Rica, along the East Coast, all throughout Florida, Texas, the Gulf Coast. But that's one of my favorite trips, was with them on that. So I'd love to hear your story. And, of course, I'd love to hear the successful trips that you've had also. What were the surprises? Share it with us right now. Let's talk to Tony. Tony is calling from Lilburn. Good morning, Tony. This is O'Neill. You're on the radio. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, O'Neill. How are you doing?
Oh, Tony. Hey, Tony. I'm doing fine. Great. It's Saturday morning. What do you think?
Well, let me start with my trip. I had a lady at work for me one time. I had a son who didn't have a father, and he wanted to go to Florida to the beach. So we went down there for 3 days, and naturally I got burned up. But he wanted to go out deep-sea fishing on one of the party boats. I didn't want to go because I was already burnt. Sunburned bad. So we went out.
I understand.
Yeah, I got a long-sleeve shirt on and got on the boat because I wanted to take him. And we got out there and got on the front of the boat. I told him, I said, get on the front. We were fishing, not catching a whole lot, and all of a sudden, I see a bunch of lightning bolts in the water. And I started telling him, I said, crank your line, crank, 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 crank. And we were on a bunch of mahi-mahi. And everybody caught a whole bunch of mahi-mahi. That's one of the first fish he caught, except for pond fish and stuff. And it turned out to be
fantastic.
Fantastic. He was all to himself.
And how long ago was that, Tony?
Oh, man, that's been 20 years.
And I'll bet you he still remembers it.
I guarantee you, because we had a great trip. Just kind of a little guy thing. The fishing part was just kind of a last-minute thing. As soon as we got off the boat, we were back in the car coming home. But we used to go pond fishing.
Well, what a great trip.
It was.
Well, I congratulate you for making that effort and taking a kid fishing whose dad didn't live at home or dad wasn't a fisherman. He'll remember that all of his life. How old is he now? Is he 25, 28, 30?
No, sir. He's probably right there. I'd say late middle 30s. He was a young man, sometime around 18 or 19 when we went.
Okay, I'll bet you that he has told that story 1,000 times.
I know I have. It was a great trip. And
boy.
Sometimes you plan them, and sometimes they just kind of fall in your lap.
Oh yeah, well that's a great story and a great trip. Where were you in Florida when you did that, Tony?
We went to Panama City, and we went out with one of Andrew's boats, party boat.
Oh yeah. He was famous, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Was it Andrews or Anderson's?
Anderson.
Anderson. Uh-huh.
I got connected with him. My dad was working for the old Green Stamp Company, and they had a company trip they'd take every year. And that was my first taste of the ocean. I finally got to go on one of the trips. And I remember waking up and coming out of the hull of the boat and looking out and seeing nothing but water. And it was one of the most fantastic feelings I ever had.
Well, it was the first trip for you two to do that with them. Well,
It was.
Hey, thanks for calling. It's great story. A terrific way to start off the program this morning.
I appreciate that. One quick question.
Yes, sir.
Me and my neighbor were talking about you, and he said he remembered you doing something about a jet ski trip down to Chattahoochee.
Yes, we went from Lake Eufaula down through the locks, all the way down the Apalachicola River, all the way to the Gulf Coast to eat oysters. Wow. We went through Lake Seminole, and it was just a fantastic trip. It was, later on I'll remember I'm sure I'll remember the service. And that was, my goodness, Tony, that was 20-plus years ago at least. No, longer ago than that. That was 30 years ago. And they are still doing that trip down the Chattahoochee all the way to the Gulf, and they have a trip on the East Coast from the Charleston area all the way up the East Coast, all on Sea-Doos and whatever jet skis.
Right. Is that an organized thing through a club or something, or?
It's a professionally done trip. I tell you what, if you're going to listen this morning, maybe in a break, I'll look it up and see if I can. It's called Discovery River Tours.
Okay.
It just came to mind. Discovery River Tours, and it's first class all the way, and it's quite an adventure.
It sounds like an adventure. I appreciate you.
You bet. Tony, glad you called, pal. I got to go right now, and stay in touch with us, will you?
I do it. Love your show. Thank you.
You bet. See you later. All right. This is O'Neill. Got to take a break, and then more of your calls, I promise. I thought we might enjoy a little music there. I believe that is probably Zach Brown. I don't know. I'm not all that good at that. But welcome back, everyone. 25 after the hour. Well, we started off talking this morning on O'Neill Outside about some of the best fishing trips you've ever taken and why. Was it a great fishing trip? Was it what you caught, where you went, or was it with whom you took, or who was it with whom you were fishing? Right now, let's chat with Alan. Alan is calling from Tallahassee, and I bet he's got a good story. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning, O'Neill. How you doing?
Oh, outstanding.
Yeah, I hear y'all about to get washed off that mountain with all that rain y'all having.
Yeah, it was Gail and I, we were out of town this week, and I've got that story to tell later on in the program. But, yes, it's Lake Lanier will be 7 feet over full, and that's typical of lakes in the southeast right now. We've had plenty of rain.
Well, my trip is me and my ex-wife back, I guess it's been 20 years ago.
Okay.
My dad used to own a little place down in a place called Astor, Florida, which is on the St. Johns River. It's where Route 40 runs from 75 in Ocala over to Ormond Beach, where the road clears the road. The second morning we were there, we caught 9 bass, O'Neill, and they weighed 66 pounds.
Oh, my goodness.
She caught the biggest she's ever caught was 10 pounds, 4 ounces.
That is an absolute giant. Alan, most people who catch a bass that weighs 7.5 or maybe pushing 8, they think it weighs 10. But
we always set our vacation time for somewhere between the full moon in February to the full moon in March. If you're going to fish Florida and you're looking for that kind of fish, or you got to be here.
Oh yeah.
Actually, right now the crappie have really started to bite down here, but it's a little bit south of the Lake George, but it's a beautiful area of the country to fish.
Well, you've got since then, and you say this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, since then, they've had the successful introduction in Florida of what they call the Florida bass. And that's a very special breed, if you will, or a strain of largemouth. And my goodness, they're even getting bigger now. Oh,
yeah, O'Neill. And then the other thing I want to holler at to you, here in North Florida, close by the house here, it's mainly about boat safety and personal safety. Is we had a gentleman slipped or whatever, fell in the water, and they found the boat, found his phone and everything, and then they found his life jacket laying in the bottom of the boat. Didn't find him. And what I was wanting to holler at people is, like me, I'm almost 65 years old now. I go fish a lot by myself. You got to be more careful nowadays. One little slip and you're in that water, and a lot of people don't like wearing their life jackets. I keep mine on. I bought one that fit good. It's comfortable to wear all the time. I keep a whistle around my neck, and I even bought a little ladder like the skiers use on their boats.
Right.
And I put it over the side of the boat the minute that trolling motor goes in the water. So in case I do go in there, I can actually help get my old ass out,
Well, one of the things, let me comment two things. The life preservers now are very small and very comfortable.
Right.
And so you should not go without one. And number two, two more things. And number two, in the wintertime, you're not in this cold water, you're not going to last long.
You got, especially on Lake Lanier. People don't realize how, you might put your hand in the top of the water and it's not, but once you go down about, 4 or 5 foot, that water can drop quickly.
Yes.
And you see the depths we've had on that lake over the years, most times that's what happened, that cold weather caught them and they lost their breath.
You can't. So your idea about the ladder, that's a great idea so that you can get back in the boat. And the other thing I want to mention is that I believe the statistics are somewhere in the territory for mature, older men, we'll say that.
Right.
That fall out and drown, most of them, their fly is open.
I don't know why that would be, but I mean,
most of them.
I understand. Yeah, I got you now. So, but that's one reason why I keep a whistle, like a referee's whistle, around my neck. Okay, if I get in there and can't get out, at least I can blow until maybe somebody comes.
That's a good idea. That's a great idea for when you go camping and things like that. And if they're children around the lake, they're children at a campsite, they should all have a whistle around their neck in case they get lost.
Then, always, let somebody know where you're going, when you spend to be back. Even stop into wherever you're putting it at the ramp. Maybe say, hey, to the fish people there, like whoever runs it, hey, I'm going out here. I'll be back in so many hours. That kind of got to me, being at the age I'm getting and thinking about how much I go by myself. That damn, I wouldn't want to end up like that.
Well, you told us about a great trip and reminded us of something that we should always do: wear our life preserver, the whistle, and provide a ladder to get back in the boat. I thank you. Thanks for calling, Alan.
Well, how's my gal doing?
She's doing fine. She's upstairs asleep.
Well, we know that. So
That's exactly
all right,
right.
buddy. You have a blessed weekend.
You too, pal. I'll see you soon. There we go. And now let's chat now with Miles is calling from Henry County, Georgia. Good morning, Miles.
Hey, buddy.
What do
Back
you
in
say?
the late 50s, I grew up around Atlanta too, pal. And I'd get up early in the morning, get back in the alley and dig them old worms up. It'd break in half when you pick them up.
Yeah, right, okay.
And you remember them? And then we'd get the cane poles and put about $2 worth of gas at old Chrysler in quarter bulk oil. It had off the Jonesboro down there at Camp Creek. And and I enjoyed that trip because I was going with my older brother and my dad. I wasn't about 13. And we'd ride down a dirt road, washed out for about a half a mile, and fish that old creek and catch them mullets. You was talking about the horny heads, I mean.
Yeah, horny heads.
Yeah, we caught them in the Little Creek, and then we caught them old bowfin grinnell in the other creek, you know.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the trip because around Atlanta we had no place to fish, maybe Piedmont Park, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But anyway, I really enjoyed that being with my older brother and his friends. And we'd stay there all day long and get us a Barlow's orange and a honey bun, and that'd last, you know.
Boy, I remember though. It's funny how when you get to talk to people about their fishing trips, you get reminded of other things that are a part of the trip, like the honey bun.
You got it, pal. Boy, they were good, wasn't they? And that's all we could afford, you know. And
sure.
But I enjoyed being down there, away from Atlanta. Down there it was quiet, and with my older brother, I felt special. You know what I mean? And, But I've fished with old buddy Dean McDonald for the last 25 years, off and on, and we had a good trip to Lanier a few times too. And,
Dean, hey, let me tell you something. Dean McDonald is a good fisherman.
He's the luckiest one I've ever seen, too.
All good ones are lucky.
Yeah, hey, he's good, no doubt about that. We had a day up there on Lear. I won't keep you, but the rainbow come out. He'll remember this. The rainbow come out, and we got to catching stripers, O'Neill. I bet we caught 10 in about an hour.
Oh, boy, you got into a school.
Yeah, and he said, I think that's the game warden's house over here. He said, there's a limit on these things. We didn't know no difference back then. But anyway, I enjoy fishing with him a lot, but that was the most memorable trip right there, being way down there.
And it's a good one, and those kind of things remind me of some great times, too. It's almost always, it's the people with whom you fish. It's not necessarily what you catch or anything, but it's the people, it's the fishing buddies, and they're good ones.
That's the reason I remember that way back then. You know what I mean? Like I say, I felt special.
If you run into Dean, tell him to give me a call.
I'll do it, buddy. I'll see him. He lives across the lake from me. I'm the one got this. Me and him bought property at the same time over here. And,
fantastic.
But I will, and you take care, O'Neill. Good to talk to you, buddy.
You bet. Glad you called, pal.
Glad
you called. You betcha. There we go. This is O'Neill Outside. We're talking about fishing trips. The fishing trips that you recall. With whom were you fishing that day? Your grandfather, your dad, another fishing buddy that you still have? Maybe a special place that you went fishing that was out of the ordinary, or maybe it was the place that you always go. Fishing trips are so fantastic. They're so treasured. You can remember them all, and especially if you take a child. Your children, your grandchildren, or as we always recommend, maybe a kid in the neighborhood whose dad isn't a fisherman or doesn't live at home. I know in my own case, I had a good buddy. His name was Rick, and his dad had a boat. And my father was not an outdoorsman, and so they were kind enough to take me to Lake Lanier in the late 50s when the lake had just backed up. And they took me fishing, and he's still a friend of mine. And we had some wonderful days. Lots of them. Welcome back. We're talking about the best fishing trips you've ever been on and whom were you fishing with, and so now we've got hey, here's our old buddy Don, and Don is calling from
Ocean Isle, North Carolina.
Hey, I got your note about the 2 books. We'll send them out to you this week.
Hey, I appreciate that. You know, that business I sold when I was 50 years old. We moved over to the coast and been fishing ever since. So, you know, I've had a bunch of fishing trips. But I guess the trip I remember the most is when we were around Atlanta, I booked a trip up to Cape Hatteras, took Ross and Donald and Charlotte, and we fished with on a boat up there called Tug of War. How in the hell I remember that, I don't know. But and they told, when we got there, I said, "Where's it? I want to see the Tug of War." They said, "Oh, you're fishing with Captain Frantic." And we of course, you fish off Hatteras. It's going to be some rough seas, so we got out there and we got into the Kings, and of course, and I don't know what the limit was in those days, but it wasn't. It's more than that now. And we lost one of the Kings, and we found out why he was called Captain Frantic. So, but of all the trips I fished on, that's the one I remember. Whenever I took those boys deep sea fishing off the coast of Carolina.
Well, that's a great trip and a great memory. And how long ago was that, Don?
Oh, Lord, it was 81, 2, or 3, somewhere along in there.
Okay, 30-plus years ago.
Yes, sir. Your trip
40.
to Louisiana, when's that going to be?
October the 22nd, I believe.
Okay. And how long are you
You're
going
going, aren't you? We'll be there. We get there on Thursday evening. I think that's the 22nd of October. And we have dinner, a nice Cajun dinner. We fish all day. Well, we fish most of the day on Friday and Saturday. And then we return after breakfast on Sunday, the 25th.
Okay. And what's the limit on redfish down there? You remember that?
The limit on, well, it's a slot limit, but you can catch 50 that are legal. And what's so much fun is the trout limit is 25.
Wow.
You believe me, Don, an experienced angler like you'll catch 25. Everybody on the boat will catch 25 before lunchtime.
And if you know how to fillet those things, they ain't bad eating either. So
yeah, we'll have them for lunch that day or dinner that night.
Well, that's great. Yep.
I'll keep you apprised.
Me to inquire about that. They like to go down there on a trip off the coast once a year. So
okay.
That may be a good trip for them.
I'm gonna put you down Ocean Isle, North Ocean Isle for 3 people, 3 or 4.
Maybe probably be 2 because I don't think I could go over and then go down there fishing. So.
Oh yeah, okay. It's a long way for you, huh?
It is that. That's like going halfway to California, and when you get there, you want to come back. So.
Yeah, that's right. I got you. Hey, a great call, pal.
Thank you. Love your show.
You bet. See you soon. There we
Bye-bye.
go. And you bet. All right, now, hey, before we get to the radio prize package, let's talk with our good friend Milton Crabapple. Good morning, Milton.
O'Neill?
Yes, sir.
Milton Crabapple.
Yes, sir.
How you
good
doing
morning,
this
Milton.
morning?
I'm doing outstanding.
Well, you know, I was listening to you talking about fishing trips, and there's a whole bunch of them come to mind for me.
Yes.
But one of the ones that I think back on that I never heard Grandpa Crabapple quit talking about until the day he died.
Okay.
Was back about 1960.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we didn't have a boat. He didn't have a boat, but folks was going up to Lake Lanier catching lots of crappie back then. All you had to do was go fishing, and you was going to catch a bunch of them back then.
Yes.
Daytime or night, or it didn't much matter. But a couple of his friends had caught a bunch of them up at 4 Mile Creek. They put a boat in there where I reckon that's Highway 369 that goes across 4 Mile Creek and 6 Mile Creek Bridge.
I do. I know those.
Well, just as they'd put in at 4 Mile Creek, and they'd go out there, I don't know, a mile or 2 around the bend, and the fella said there's an old stick up, an old gnaw down, laying in the water there from a beaver, and he said that's where they loaded up on them.
Oh, boy.
Well, we didn't have a boat, but Grandpa Crabapple decided that we could park on the other side up there on the ridge, and he had it calculated that we could walk through the woods and get over there to where that place was. Well, him and Grandma Crabapple and me and my sister Cornelia, she was about 5 or 6 years old, he bought a big bucket of minnows, and we got in tackle box and all this stuff, and we walked. We cut out through the woods, and I'm telling you, we run into the biggest swamp you ever saw. We thought we was going to end up like the Donner Party before it was all over with. I ended up tripping. I was in charge of toting the minnows, and I ended up tripping on an old barbed wire fence, fell over and spilled all the minnows on the ground in the leaves. We was all down on our hands and knees digging them things out of the leaves, and he said, well, we got to hurry and get to the water. Well, we finally made it as far as we could go. He said, we can't go no further. He said, we were all exhausted. My sister was crying, and Grandma was cussing, and he said, let's just stop and fish. We headed off down the hill and came to the water, and he said, we're going to fish right here. It don't matter. Well, we dipped up some water and saved what minnows we could. And I got rigged up first, and he handed me a fishing pole. I threw it out in there, and I caught a crappie that was the size of a Gallagher Bible. I'm telling you, he was a whopper. Next cast caught another, and we sat right there, and I think we caught 103 crappie.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, we had to go all the way back, so he pulled out one of them old yellow nylon stringers about 6 feet long. You know the ones I'm talking about.
I do, yes.
Had a little old loop, little old metal ring on one end and a little old sharp probe on the other end. We had strung them things up. Well, when he got his handkerchief out and wrapped it around his hand, and he put that stringer over his shoulder, and he always told it. He said, I had one crappie laying on my shoulder, and the last one was dragging the ground.
103.
And we went all the way back to the car. I'd like to kill us getting back to the car, but we got back, and I'm telling you, we were scratched up with briars, had chiggers all over us, and skint knees, and it was a lot of fun to me, but it wasn't fun to Grandma Crabapple and my sister Cornelia. But
I'll bet
I'm telling you, he was cleaning crappie till 2 o'clock in the morning.
And here you are, we're talking about that trip, and it was 1960.
I believe it was about 1960.
Yep.
But that trip sticks out in my mind more than most of them do, because that was a real adventure. Now, I thought I was a sure enough He-Man when I made it through that thing.
That's
I
right.
felt like Johnny Weissmuller when I got home.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, sir.
That's what fishing trips are for. That was 60 years ago this springtime.
I believe it was. Then it was in the springtime, too, so that had been about 60 years ago.
Oh, my goodness. Milton, that's a wonderful story.
Stop by the jail. I'll tell you some more good stories.
Mighty fine. You can count on me doing that. Thanks for calling, sir.
Yes, sir.
You bet. Thank you, Milton. Milton always has a fabulous story, and he's kind enough to pass them along to us. Let's do the radio prize package. What do you say? Telephone numbers for the radio prize package are 404-872-0750 or 800-972-8255. The prize package, the rules are you have to be 18 years old, and you cannot have won the prize package before. Your first answer is the only answer you're going to be able to give to us. You can't guess. But this is easy. The radio prize package, you get a Bojangles gift card. You can get some biscuits there. A big green egg koozie kit. You can keep your drinks or your beer cold. An Angler magazine, DNR from Georgia, Department of Natural Resources Rigs magazine. A can of Fisher's Choice baits. A selection, a nice package of True Turn tackle. An Arctic Ice travel pack. That's that freezer packs you get from Arctic Ice. You won't buy ice anymore. A moon phase clock, and you should pay attention to that. And a Hydro Shot glass from Works Tools. It's a Hydro Shot. And what's the question? What is the name of the cabin here in North Georgia where we produce this show? What is the name of the cabin here in North Georgia where we produce this show, O'Neill Outside. And we always say from so-and-so cabin in North Georgia. It should be an easy answer for you. 404-872-0750, 800-972-8255. I cannot resist. There's a lesson hidden in Milton's call. And what is that? He said he went probably 1960. Well, Lake Lanier filled up, and it got to full pool in 1957. Now, pay attention on reservoirs that are new reservoirs. Years number 3, 4, and 5 are the best years for fishing on that reservoir. I was very fortunate. I got to fish a lot of reservoirs in their 3rd, 4th, and 5th years. The fish proliferate in all of that new water, all of that new ground, all of the new weeds, all of the new structure. And it's ultra fertile, and you'll catch more in those years, bass, crappie, whatever, than any years in the life of the reservoir. Now, unless something else happens, like at Lake Lanier, which is, I talk about that a lot, but I use it as an example, about 12 years ago was a new forage fish was put in by striper fishermen, and it was the blueback herring, instead of just having thread fin shad, and it rejuvenated that lake for spotted bass and largemouth and crappie and everything else. So that's a lesson today, if you will. Year 3, year 4, and year 5. It's 52 after the hour. No, well, there you are. We got a full boat of calls, and we'll pick the winner in a few moments, and we'll get to that. You're listening to and watching on VOD networks all over the country, O'Neill Outside radio program, and it's called, I'm very happy about this, it's Works Radio, WORX, and you should, one of these days on the videos on Facebook, I'll show you all these battery-powered tools that I have now. Drills, the switch driver, a chainsaw, a blower, a hydro-shot high-pressure washer, all of it battery-powered. It's unbelievable. I'll show them all to you one day. And you can visit O'Neill Outside, and you can click right on the home page. You can watch the shows on the Video On Demand networks. It's real easily done. When we get back, we'll talk about our winner for the radio prize package. This is O'Neill, 404-872-0750, 800-972-8255. You stay right there. There's more headed your way. Okay, let's give away the radio prize package. What do you say? Before we do that, I want to remind you that you can watch O'Neill Outside television on the Fox Sports networks and the VOD networks, and there's dozens of them, and you can watch all of the past seasons. And if you can stand O'Neill that much, then I do have some great guests that I can that we can get some information from. Okay, let's post this radio prize package winner, and the question was, what is the name of the cabin where we produce this radio program? And Jesse is calling on line number 1. Good morning, Jesse.
How you doing, O'Neill?
Lovely. I'm glad you called. And what's the name of the cabin that we've given this place?
Three Falls Cabin.
And I would imagine by that you can tell there are 3 waterfalls on this cabin area.
Yes, sir.
Yes, well, I hope you enjoy the radio prize package. You've got some, I'll tell you what, that have you ever used any of that Arctic ice?
Yeah, once or twice.
Yes, indeed.
You don't go back to regular ice after that.
Yeah, well, that's this is good stuff. You got a nice package from True Turn and Roadrunner, and I hope you enjoy it, and I appreciate your participation in the program.
All righty, we thank you.
Mighty fine. Give us a couple of weeks. We'll get it to you.
All right. Thank you.
Mighty fine. Glad you called. Have a great weekend, pal. This is O'Neill. Mike, you'll have to hold on through the break, I'm afraid. Let's see. Yeah, because we want to talk about your fishing story. It's 58 after the hour right now. We've got another hour of outdoors headed your way from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. We do have to take a break for the news. That's what's necessary. Telephone numbers for you to join us are 404-872-0750 and 800-972-8255. In the second portion of O'Neill Outside this morning, we will have the mailbag. Yes, indeed, and how you can be in touch on the mailbag. And the favorite portion of the program, deep into the second hour, is the Medal of Honor tribute. And we've got a special Medal of Honor tribute to read to you today. They're all special, and we'll give you the connection so that you can read about these true heroes also. So, this is O'Neill with O'Neill Outside and Works Radio. And we do thank our sponsors for the program. And so if you'll hold on through the break, Mike and the rest of you will have more outdoors when we get back. This is O'Neill Outside with Works Radio. It's the middle of February, and we're starting to talk about fishing. Before we get to the first call, it's my obligation, it's my pleasure to tell you that you can watch O'Neill Outside television on the Fox Sports networks, VOD networks like Prime, Waypoint TV, Destination Go, Pursuit Up, Carbon TV, and you can find out all about those by visiting o'neilloutside.com. They're all there, and you can watch all the shows there and on YouTube. So, self-promotion's out of the way. I will tell you this program is brought to you proudly by Works Tools, Stripling's General Store, The Tough Shed. That's one of those things that you didn't know how much you need it until you got it. Snellville Heating and Air, Rocco's Pub, the Department of Natural Resources in Georgia, state parks and historic sites, the Big Green Egg, and True Turn hooks and Roadrunner lures. We've got TJ's tips coming up, the mailbag, the Medal of Honor tribute, and your calls. The telephone numbers are 404-872-0750. That's 404-872-0750 in the Atlanta, Georgia area, and coast to coast on the Sports Broadcast Network. From Seattle to L.A. to Miami to Maine, the sports broadcast 155 stations across the country, and the telephone numbers are or is 800-972-8255, 800-972-8255. Later on in the program, we'll have the Medal of Honor tribute, and before I get away from that, I want to tell you you can read all about the Medal of Honor awardees at o'neilloutside.com. Right in the middle of the homepage, you'll see a medallion on the right-hand side that says the Medal of Honor website. And believe me, as I mention every week, those are heroes. And it'll be my pleasure to tell one of those stories to you today. This is O'Neill. Got to go to a break. When we get back, we'll get to the calls, I promise. If you O'Neill Outside Television, we'll get our timing all synced up here. Before we get to the first call, we're talking about some of the best fishing trips you've ever taken. Who were you fishing with whom? What did you catch? Where did you go? What are some of your memorable trips? And here's one right here. Mike is calling from Dallas, and Mike's got a fishing trip to tell us about. Good morning, Mike. You're on the air.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Well, if you want to talk about fishing, my phones are going to die soon, but the first time I remember fishing, my granddad took me out on a boat, and we were fishing for catfish, and we had the trolling motor going. And he let me act like I was driving the boat, even though the boat was going nowhere because they had a big anchor and we were fishing for catfish. But, you know, after you hook a fish, you can let someone reel it in.
Yes. Where?
No.
Mike, where were you? Yes, where were you fishing?
Lake Ray Hubbard.
Oh, Lake Ray Hubbard. You know, I was in Texas this week, and I.
Then you didn't come by to say hello to me.
No, I was on a track, but I was reminded of Lake Ray Hubbard. I saw it this week, and I will tell you, with all the rain, it was full.
You like the singer Ray Wiley Hubbard, right?
Yeah, Lake Ray Hubbard. You're right.
No,
Texas.
but the singer.
Oh, okay.
Ray Wiley Hubbard.
Oh, I don't remember that. Well, so how big was the catfish that you caught, and did you go with your grandfather again after that?
Oh, we used to catch the channel cat.
Uh-huh.
Okay, there was a power plant right there.
Yes.
Next to the jetty.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess people would say that the power plant created a lot of heat.
Mm-hmm.
And so the channel cat would go spawn over there. And you didn't even need a boat. You could go over there on the jetty and just pick up fish out of the rocks.
Right. How about that? Yeah, the warm water caused them to enjoy that very much. Catfish is a warm water fish. Well, hey, that's great. Mike, I appreciate you calling and giving us that. Now, I will ask you, how is it that you're listening to the show? What station are you listening? May I ask that?
1310 The Ticket.
Okay, The Ticket in Dallas.
But can I ask one question before I go?
Sure, certainly.
And I know you'll know about this. Okay. I have spent, I don't know how many hours of my life trying to become good at doing something. Let's say you become good at fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And then people say, okay, well, do fishing for $20. And if you say, no, I don't do fishing for $20, they're going to say, oh, how come you don't fish for $20 no more? And so you constantly have to be the best fisherman, because if you don't catch fish for 1 month, then everyone would say, oh, O'Neill knows nothing about fishing. He hasn't caught a fish a month.
Well, we have to be constantly improving and constantly referring to our successful trips, I think, maybe. What do you think? Hey, I'm glad you called, Mike. Be sure and stay in touch. And be sure and thank you for listening on the Big Ticket in Dallas, Texas, on the Sports Broadcast Radio Network. You stay in touch, all right? I appreciate that. Now, let's go. It's 16 after the hour. Let's talk to Mac. He's got a great report, I would imagine, about Lake Lanier. Good morning, Captain Mack.
Good morning. How'd you know I was going to have a great report? That's awesome.
Well, all that fresh water, I said, if anybody can catch them on Lanier, it's got to be Mac.
I'll tell you, well, thank you very much. You're very kind. But, I think we were all, and not just on Lanier, a lot of lakes got this huge influx of new water in the last few days. Yeah, it's crazy. And we were all leery of it, but the fishing's held up really well. And I think what's happened, particularly on Lanier and some of the other southeastern lakes, our fish were so deep. I'm not sure they're affected. I'm not sure some of this incoming water is warmer, and it's not making its way to the bottom, so to speak, and that bite's held up pretty well. Now, there were some places just got absolutely blown out.
Mm-hmm.
And it flushed the bait out, it flushed the fish out. And I talked about this a great deal in my fishing report this week, but now after it moderates, this can actually be a plus. That warmer water tends to heat up a little quicker, or the dirty water rather.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Probably because it's got some color.
Yes, it'll hold that heat. So when it heats up again early in the week, I would think, particularly for the bass guys, look for a lot of those fish to move up. And the other thing you got to factor in, most of our lakes are way over full pool. You've got an abundance of shallow flooded cover. In addition to the normal stuff, wood, blown down trees, bushes, grass. You can throw in there some dock walkways, some picnic tables, and a barbecue grill they'll go to any of that. They don't care.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, when it's been my experience, when the water comes up like that, a lot of the bass will pull up with it. The drawback with that is they scatter really badly. You got fish that it's everywhere. It's fanned out in that new cover, and you need a high saturation technique. I know you'll like this, a spinnerbait, any color's fine, as long as it's chartreuse, and just start covering water with it. It can be a really good pattern these next few days, because it does look like we've got a little bit of warm up. More rain in the forecast, I don't think, what we got last week. But all in all, fishing is good. The striper bite still revolves around really deep water, live baits, down lines. And there's still a lot of bass deep, but watch, there's shallow fish, and I suspect we'll see more the next time it warms up. And it's curious to see.
Let me ask, I understand.
Yep.
Go ahead. Proceed, Mac. I'm sorry if I interrupted.
No. I was just going to say it's going to be really curious to see how this plays out in the next few weeks. We got more rain coming, and it's going to be interesting to see how the lakes fluctuate and how the fish react to it and how we react to it.
Well, it might, even if you don't fish, a little trip on the lake, watching what it looks like, this lake and so many other lakes, what it looks like when I know Lake Lanier by Monday is going to be 7 feet over pool.
We will probably hit a new record. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
right, and it'll be interesting to see what it looks like. But one thing to tip, because there's so many people on the lake or want to take a look, you have to be careful because there'll be a lot of floating logs and things like that around.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of debris. It takes a few days. Once the wind starts blowing, it tends to push it up in the pockets, and the lake does finally start falling. It'll go away. But yeah, particularly if you're running early in the morning, or if you got fog or any kind of low light conditions, really be cautious of that, because there's a lot of things floating, and they're not necessarily easy to see. They're floating right at the surface. Get a little chop or something, a lot of times you don't see it until it's right under your bow. So really be watching that all over the southeast. Absolutely.
Well, before I drop and you head for the lake, I want to tell everyone that, and I would imagine it still works for you, and I'll ask you about it. A fishing trip with Mac, or many of the seasoned guides on Lanier and lakes all over the southeast and the east coast, one of the things that you should achieve or learn from your guide is a lesson about the lake.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm sure it happens with you, doesn't it?
It does, and ask your guide. Tell him what you want. Ask him or make it clear what your expectations are. If he doesn't know, it makes it harder for that to happen. But most guys are very willing to teach and share those things, and not just the fishing part of it, the lake. And a lot of them, got a lot of experience. They've been running up and down these lakes for years. Take advantage of them. Ask them questions. Tell him what you need. Right. Enable him to do his job.
One more quick question, and I got to go. How long have you been a guide on Lake Lanier? Quickly.
This will start 37 years. This started 37 years.
37 years. I got to go, Mac. I'll see you soon, pal. This is O'Neill with O'Neill Outside and Works Radio. We'll be back. We're on Works Radio today. This is O'Neill, and we're talking about the best fishing trip you've ever taken. What are the memories? Where did you go? What did you catch? With whom were you fishing that day that makes this fishing trip special? Maybe not above all others, but at least special. Before we get to the remaining portions of that, let's speak with our good friend Henry, and he has a fly fishing report, fishing muddy waters. Good morning, Henry.
Well, I love them muddy waters, Memphis, you're my home. Isn't there a song?
You really are good at that, aren't you? That was good.
Boy. Well, listen, I don't have much of a fly fishing report when it's muddy,
I'll bet not.
The striper fishing on Lanier is not for the fly fishermen right now with all this high water. Matter of fact, listening to Mac's report, on top of the floating debris and all the high cold water and the dirty water, on top of all that, I'd say 2/3 of the ramps, or maybe 3/4 of the ramps, are closed. So you need to make sure if you're going to go to the lake, you check to see the water is so high the Corps has closed most of the ramps on Lanier. There are a few open, but there's not many.
I appreciate that. I hadn't thought of that this morning.
And you can go on their website, and they'll tell you. If you'll Google Corps of Engineers Lake Lanier, you can see what ramps are still open, or they'll at least tell you what ramps are certainly closed. But so if you were going to go fishing on Lanier today, and if you happen to be brave enough to want to fish with a fly rod, the best time to go is going to continue to be the last hour and a half of the day. There seems to be what little high in the water column bite, we'll call it, because these fish are mostly being caught from 40 to 80 feet deep all winter this year. It's just been one of those strange anomalies on Lanier and all around our regional lakes here in the southeast. But the fish tend to get up higher in the water column the last hour and a half during the day. So if you're going to go, just figure on getting out around 4:30, 5 o'clock. And even though it does get dark about 6:45, by 6:30, you want to be heading back down towards your ramp just so that you can see where you're driving with all the high water and the debris and everything. So you just got to be safe out there.
Good idea.
Anyway, I'm just going to tell you real quick. I've got two very quick stories to tell you about my best fishing. One happened to me, O'Neill, when I was probably 10 years old, living in the Northeast in New York, and my dad and I went fluke fishing. Are you familiar with fluke?
Yes.
Fluke or summer flounder. Up in the Northeast, we call them fluke. And the way to catch them in the summertime was to get in a boat and drift and put your baits down on the bottom and drift along a channel. And I'll never forget, my dad took me out, and we were going in a friend's boat. And his friend, I couldn't have been 10 years old, and his friend never showed up for the first part of the morning. Something came about that he just couldn't make it. And as an anxious 10-year-old kid, I didn't know what to do. I was a little disappointed. So my father at the marina where he kept his boat had them put us in a rowboat and tied us up. They drag us out with a motor, took us out in a rowboat without a motor on it, and tied us to a buoy. Now I'm sitting there going, but you can't catch fish because we got to drift for fluke. You can't drift. My father said to me, no. We're going to cast our spinning rods out, and we're going to pull the baits back to us slowly as if the boat were drifting, but it's not. And I want you to know what a lesson for a 10-year-old kid, my dad and I, until his friend showed up about 3 hours late. When he did come to get us, we must have had a dozen keeper fluke in the boat, and what a lesson that was. So, there's always, if there's a will, there's a way. And I'll never forget that trip.
How long ago was that, Henry? How long ago was that?
I'm going to say that was around 1970, give or take.
How about that?
What
50
a lesson.
Years ago. 50
years ago. But I'll tell you another great quick one. I went out you talked about, and this will bring this whole thing full circle. You talk about going out with a guide. Back in 92, I went down to Tampa Bay to fish redfish for the very first time with a fly rod. And I hired a guide, and we went out. And as you know, Tampa Bay, there are days where the water is clear, and there are days where the water is dirty. And when the water is dirty or tannic, you can't see the redfish. So here I am on a day fly fishing with this guide, and we can't see a thing in the water because the water was tannic in Tampa Bay that day. So this gentleman, unbeknownst, didn't say anything to me, takes out 2 spinning rods with 2 big cork chartreuse floats and puts out 2 pilchards and casts them out. And I looked at him and I said, Ray, I don't want to bait fish. I want to fly fish. He goes, I know, Henry. Just take it easy. Sure enough, long story short, the first fish comes and hits. Ray grabs the rod. As the fish runs, he puts his hand over the spinning rod spool and pops the rig. But it popped in front of the float, not behind the float where the bait was. Now all of a sudden we've got this float in the water, and the fish went back to the school of redfish. All we did was follow that float around like a bird dog all morning, and we caught redfish till the cows came home. And that was Captain Ray Van Horn, who I'll never forget. What a lesson. What a lesson.
Yes.
Isn't that something?
That's great. Terrific.
So there are
just
things
follow
we don't
the float.
remember about. We followed the float. In a day that you could not see redfish, we'd go over to the float. He'd throw out a couple pilchards. The school of redfish would come up and go crazy. I'd throw my fly in, and I think I had 8 redfish that morning before noon.
And how long ago was that? That was 20 years ago. 30.
That was 1992.
There's nothing like a fishing trip.
A great trip with a great guide.
You bet. Glad you called, Henry.
All right, pal. You take care. Have a good weekend.
You too. I'll see you soon. There you are. 404-872-0750, 800-972-8255. It's time. It's 31 after the hour. You're listening to O'Neill Outside and Works Radio. And here is your TJ's True Turn Tackle Tip. It's named for TJ Stallings, who's not with us any longer. One of the finest fellows and finest fishermen and knowledgeable fishermen I've ever met. He was always doing something positive. And here is a tip from TJ brought to you by True Turn. Keep an angler's journal. Each time you go fishing, write down as much data as possible about the weather and the water conditions. However, always include what you were using to catch fish or what did not work too. Do not forget about the moon phase, the barometric pressure, and the cloud cover. You can refer to the journal over the years to condition your approach to each body of water, and you will catch more fish. And then, two, it will give you a history of your fish and bring back some fabulous memories. And that is your True Turn tackle tip from TJ. Isn't that great? 33 after the hour. We've got time to, we're going to talk to whoever that is. He must be listening to the program. Okay. One of the things I always, if I can, even as minute as it might be, I always want you, if you're watching O'Neill Outside television or you're listening to Works Radio, I always want you to learn something. Something sometimes very, very simple. Ready? A largemouth and a spotted bass are not bass. Those are sunfish. A striper is a bass. Got it? A shoal bass, a red eye, a spot, a Kentucky, a largemouth, they're all sunfish. A striper is a bass. And thank goodness your contributions via taxes, excise taxes, licenses, permits, all of those things that whether it's a gun, camping gear, rod, reel, lures, the excise taxes, permits, licenses that you pay, that I pay, those things all contribute to conservation so that we have the best fishing, the best hunting, and the greatest array of wildlife on earth in this country. You keep that in mind when you're talking with someone about fishing and hunting and who pays for conservation in this country. It's 35 after the hour, 404-872-0750, 800-972-8255. Let's see if we can squeeze this in. If not, I can talk to him elsewhere. Here's Richard calling from West Virginia. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning there, O'Neill. You were asking about fishing stories that you could tell.
Please.
Actually, you're saying the best fishing stories. I don't know that these are the best, but it's two fishing stories that I can remember.
Okay.
And one of them where I was fishing in a place appropriately called Fish Creek. Mm-hmm. And I was down there, and we were catching bass. And while we were doing it, my buddy was down there, and the next thing I know, I felt something in my back just scratching me, and I said, what was this? And what he did, he got a pretty good-sized bass and just pulled my shirt back and threw the bass down my back.
Oh.
And I'll tell you what, those things will, I didn't think that they would scratch you, but they will. They have fins on them.
Yeah, they're bony little critters.
Yeah. And the other fishing story I had when I went to I think it was called North Fork, Canada. This was probably 10 years ago. I went down there with a fireman and a doctor, and when I went in there, it was in May, and it was cold, and it was snow flurry and everything, and they wouldn't go out because they'd go there like 2 or 3 times a year. Well,
Richard, I want to hear this story, but I've got to go to a break. If you think you're listening to Works Radio, and we've got another story headed our way from Richard. I hope Richard is still there. You still there, Richard? Let's finish up our story, buddy. I want to hear about it.
Okay, I'm still here, and it was
okay.
The second one was North Bay, Ontario, Canada, and I was up there in May, and went with a doctor and a fireman, and it was cold and snowing, and they would go like 2 or 3 times a year, and I only went once. So they were staying in the cabin, and I wanted to go out, and so I went out there, and I was using the. Somehow I broke my fishing rod, so the doctor said you can use mine. So I went out there and just took it and left it sit there, and apparently a lake trout grabbed hold of it and pulled his rod in the lake. I don't know how that could happen. He said it was a lake trout that did it. So I came down there, and that was my fishing trip right there. That I lost a pretty good sized fish. But when I came back into the cabin, they told me the fireman was a practical joker, and he took his son had the fireworks M80s, and he was throwing them right at my legs. And I told the kid, I said, "You throw another one at me, I'm going to beat the hell out of you." And his dad said, "You do, and I'll beat the hell out of you." So he did, and I went over and grabbed the kid, and he went over and grabbed me and threw me out through the screen door, and then we were thrown out of the cabin. So,
well,
I don't know.
Sounds like a great trip, Richard.
Didn't say it wasn't too great, but it was just like I wasn't about to sit in the cabin when I went clear up to North Bay, Ontario, Canada, and sit in there. I don't care if it was snowing or not, but I guess you could call it an interesting trip, but it was sort of a disaster in a way.
Well, it's a trip that you remember, and I thank you for telling us about that. And always, Richard, listening to the program, I always know that you're out there, and I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. All right, let's go. Hell, we've got time for this. It's 42 after the hour on Works Radio. Let's talk to Larry. Good morning, Larry. What's your fishing story for us this morning?
Okay, Neil, I have to go back to the 60s. And it's Tallahassee, Florida, or Swan, I can't remember which. But anyway, the funny thing about the trip was it was a men's club. And we got to the place, had old white houses full of cabins, nice place, wonderful place. But anyway, we got there, and he had about 6 guys lined up for us. So me and Pop and Mac McCullough, and Pope Dixon, we were looking at the boats, and there was one old fella, had an old green boat, had the worst looking boat out there. So we thought, well, we'll sacrifice and let the other guys have the good boats. So we took off in the river. You know how it is in Florida. You go out the creeks, and then you wind up out in the flats. So we're going along. He's flying, and all of a sudden he cuts his motor. You couldn't see the bottom because the water was kind of brackish like. And then he'd take a pole, and he'd pole us over these sandbars. You know, I didn't know how in the world this old man knew that these sandbars were there. But anyway, make a long story short, he got out there, and we caught 396 fish. It was 300. I've never caught that many fish before. Never had that much fun before, and ain't never caught that many fish again.
How long ago was that, Larry?
It was in the 60s, O'Neill. I'm old.
Man, 50 years
about
ago.
As old as you are.
Yeah, so, well, it happens every day.
No, so I couldn't tell you the exact year. All I know is that what was funny was the rest of the boats come in with these fancy boats and sonar and all their gadgets, and they didn't do so good.
Oh, boy. You got with a seasoned angler.
Oh, he
Someone
knew.
who really knew about it.
He had lived there his whole life, so he knew.
I see.
How that old man knew how to cut that motor and pull out that pole, but he stuck us out there in the hole, and I think it was sand butter. I don't even know what kind. They were delicious tasting fish. But I can remember the number because I've never done that again. 396 fish.
I don't know anyone that ever has. Larry, thanks for calling, my good friend.
All right, take it easy, man.
You bet. I appreciate you listening to the show and giving us a call. It's 45 after the hour. This is O'Neill with Works Radio every Saturday morning, 404-872-0750, 800-972-8255. We do this every Saturday morning, 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. on WSB 95.5 FM and 750 a.m. and on the Sports Broadcast Network from Texas. Got a call from Texas today, from Dallas, all the way to Miami, to Maine, to Seattle, and L.A., and we appreciate you listening to the program. We are in our 27th year, I think, something of that nature. So, and we have a very special portion of the program. It always is very special. It's the Medal of Honor tribute. It'll be coming up in a couple of minutes. And I want to tell you that how we got to the Medal of Honor tribute. It was 6 or 8 years ago that a famous entertainer and singer, fabulous entertainer, fabulous singer, and she died. And she drowned in her bathtub basically because of a drug overdose. And the governor of the state in which she lived had declared half-staff flag presentations in celebration of her life and regret of her death. And that sort of made me mad. I thought, now there's a lot of heroes in the world, and she's not one of them, deserving of a half-staff presentation of the Stars and Stripes. So I said, I know some heroes, and I looked them up. The Medal of Honor recipients, those men and women, officers, privates in our armed services that put their lives in jeopardy, as with our description today. So I'll ask WSB if they can't to start me off just a little bit early, because this is indeed a bit of a lengthy one. Are you all set, fellas?
And strength of character. These qualities are embodied by the recipients of the Medal of Honor. Now let's recognize this week's Medal of Honor recipient on O'Neill Outside.
Sergeant Thomas Baker, February the 15th Medal of Honor. He was in the Mariana Islands in July of 1944. When his entire company was held up by fire from automatic weapons and small arms fire from enemy positions, Sergeant Baker voluntarily took a bazooka and dashed alone, that is, to within 100 yards of the enemy. Through heavy rifle and machine gun fire, he knocked out the strong point, enabling his company to assault the ridge. Days later, Sergeant Baker again voluntarily took up a position in the rear to protect the company against a surprise attack and came upon 2 heavily fortified enemy pockets manned by 2 officers and 10 enlisted men, which had been bypassed. Without regard for such superior numbers, he unhesitatingly attacked and killed them all. 500 yards later, he discovered a 6-man enemy force that had concealed themselves behind our lines, and he killed all of them. On July 44, the perimeter of which Sergeant Baker was part was attacked from 3 sides by 3,000 to 5,000 Japanese. During the early stages of the attack, Sergeant Baker was seriously wounded, but he insisted on remaining in the line and fired at the enemy at ranges sometimes as close as 5 yards until his ammunition ran out. Sergeant Baker refused to be removed any farther, stating that he preferred to be left to die rather than risk the lives of any more of his friends. And he was placed in a sitting position against a small tree. Another soldier, withdrawing, offered assistance. Sergeant Baker refused, insisting that he be left alone and be given a pistol with its remaining 8 rounds. When last seen alive, Sergeant Baker was propped up against a tree, pistol in hand, calmly facing the foe. Later, Sergeant Baker's body was found in the same position. Gun was empty, with 8 Japanese dying before him. His deeds were in keeping with the highest traditions of the U.S. Army. Thomas Baker died July 1944. He was 28 years old. And that, my listeners, is a hero. 404-872-0750, 800-972-8255. I know it's hard to discuss a simple little fishing trip here and there after hearing the story like that, but all of you seem to appreciate hearing those things, and I am full, if you will, in my amateur research into those men and women who sacrificed their lives for their fellow soldiers and our freedom. It's 51 after the hour. I have a story to tell you about. My friend and I, well, let's tell a different one. When I was 18 years old, I've got time for this. When I was 18 years old, my new girlfriend of recent vintage and I, along with my little brother, decided to go fishing. It was in Norris Lake in Lithonia, Georgia. We decided a short trip, maybe 8 o'clock to midnight, would be satisfactory. We lost the paddle overboard. We had lanterns with us. We were going to go crappie fishing. And I scrounged out a 2x4 and I rowed out to a dock. Well, the rowing style wet the matches in our pocket. I lost the tackle. My brother kicked the tackle box over the side. We rowed back to the dock, and my girlfriend, she was supposed to tie up the boat, the front of the boat, the bow, and I was going to tie up the back of the boat to the dock. She didn't tie up her side. She had to go to the little girl's room. When I was unloading the tackle, the boat slipped away from the dock, and I fell in. It wasn't the presentation of my fishing skills that I hoped to be able to show to her. That was 58 years ago. And that girl and I, well, we're still paddling. Sometimes ill-equipped, but always willing to share a funny story, smile and laugh, and enjoy the days and enjoy the evenings. Her name is Gail Olivia Williams. And this summer, we'll celebrate our 55th anniversary. This is O'Neill. I'll be back. 57 after the hour. We've got a lot of calls. We can't get to every one of them today, but let's talk to, did we lose Kathy? I'm sorry for that. I wanted to hear her story. Instead, let's jump right quick. The next on the line was Buck, and calling from Norcross. Good morning, Buck. What do you say?
Good morning.
Tell me quickly. I'm running out of time.
Well, when I was a kid, I remember riding in a boat on a Ted Williams, old Sears Crafts and Ted Williams with my dad.
Wow.
And a friend from church. And the water come up a big old storm that day. And I remember laying in the floorboard of that boat, hitting the bottom, boom, boom, boom. And I got another funny one, I tell you. we was up in North Georgia mountains up there trout fishing. We stopped by McDonald's and ate breakfast. There was two of my buddies in the truck with me. And one of them said, "You got some napkins?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" He says, I got to go to the bathroom. And
okay.
I said, "Well, where's the porta pot down there at War Woman?" He said, "No, you don't understand." So I had to stop the truck right there, and he looked one way and looked the other way. And he just had to go inside the road. And he sat back up on my toolbox, and me and my other buddy started laughing at him. And he had a mess all over him. And when we got down there to go fishing, he was gone for about 20 minutes washing his clothes.
There's nothing like what goes on a fishing trip. Hey, Buck,
memories, boy, and we laugh about that all the time.
I'm sure you do. I'm glad you called, Buck, and appreciate you listening to the program. I really do.
Appreciate
there
it.
We
Thank
go.
You, sir.
You bet. I'm sorry, John and Archie, I can't get to all your calls this morning. This is O'Neill Outside and Works Radio. I do appreciate you guys all listening to the program and giving us a call and telling us about your fishing stories. It's a great demonstration, isn't it, that you should build your own fishing stories now and at every opportunity. And did you notice today in our conversations how often it was, I went with my dad, I went with my grandson, I went with my grandfather. There's nothing like a fishing trip. You'll remember it forever. And now that you have a cell phone, you can take lots and lots of photos that will remind you of the wonderful day that you had fishing. So you keep this in mind as you go. If you're too busy to go fishing and take a kid along, you're too busy. This is O'Neill. We'll see you next week.
I once asked a mighty hunter, coming home from the field, how he came to possess such mighty hunting and fishing skill. He said, "I'll tell you a secret, son. I learned everything I know from listening to O'Neill Outside on my radio." O'Neill, O'Neill, O'Neill Outside.